Today, we're tackling a massive question, one that's literally about our survival. How are we going to feed a planet of 8 and soon to be 10 billion people? The answer, it turns out, isn't just about planting more stuff. It's this incredibly complex scientific puzzle. So let's start breaking it down.
To really get a handle on just how huge this challenge is, let's zoom in on one country, India. For its scientists and its farmers, this question is not abstract. It's real and it's urgent. How do you feed over 1 billion people when there are thousands more mouths to feed every single day?
And that's not just some abstract number. That's over 1 billion stomachs that need to be filled every single day. To keep up, India alone is going to need more than 250 million tons of grain every year. It is a relentless, massive demand.
Now you might be thinking, well, why not just, plant more crops on more land? The thing is, we've pretty much run out of new land to farm. Most of the good stuff is already being used, and often it's being used really intensively. So the key here is that we can't just expand outwards. We have to get smarter and way more efficient with the land we already have.
And here's the catch, right? Past successes, like the famous Green Revolution, they were amazing at boosting food production, but they came with a pretty steep price tag, a huge strain on our water and our soil. So the challenge today is really twofold. We have to grow more food, absolutely, but we have to do it sustainably, without wrecking the very environment that we all depend on.
So how do we pull this off? Well, we're going to follow a really clear, scientific blueprint. We'll start by looking at that blueprint, then see how it all begins with creating the perfect seed. After that, we'll explore how to nurture and protect the crop, and finally, we'll look ahead to what farming for the future really means.
To get this incredible leap in production, a four-fold increase in food grains in India since the 50s, using only 25% more land, that wasn't an accident. Scientists developed a really clear 3-step blueprint. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so this journey to get more food out of every plant really breaks down into 3 key stages. First, you've got to improve the plant itself, right from the very beginning, with the seed. Second, you improve how it's actually grown. That's the production part. And third, you have to protect that crop all the way to harvest. It all starts with step 1, the seed.
Everything in farming, everything, starts with a seed. So it just makes sense that the very first step is to make that seed as good as it can possibly be. This is all about improving the crop variety.
First things first, you need the right tool for the job. For basic energy, the fuel that keeps our bodies running, we need carbohydrates, and we get those from staple cereals like rice, wheat, and maize. But fuel isn't the whole story. To build and repair our bodies, we need protein. That's where pulses come in. We're talking about things like chickpeas, lentils, and peas. They're the essential building blocks for our bodies.
And to round out that nutritional trio, we need healthy fats. We get those from oilseeds like sunflowers, soybeans, and groundnuts. They provide all the essential oils for a really balanced diet.
So how do scientists actually improve these crops? Well, one of their most powerful tools is something called hybridization. It's basically selective breeding, but for plants. By crossing 2 plants that are genetically different, they can create a brand new variety that hopefully combines the best traits from both of its parents.
And what are they actually looking for? Well, this is basically their wish list. Of course, they want a higher yield, but it's also about improved quality, like better baking quality in wheat or more protein in a lentil. They also breed plants to resist diseases and survive droughts. They want crops that grow faster so farmers can get more harvests in a single year. And sometimes, they even select for weird traits like dwarfness in cereals so the plant doesn't waste energy growing a tall stalk and puts all that energy into the grain that we actually eat. Pretty smart. Okay, so we've designed our perfect seed. But a great blueprint is totally useless if you don't execute it properly. Now we have to actually grow it. And that brings us to step 2. Improving crop production. Just like us, plants need a balanced diet to really thrive. They get some basic stuff like carbon and oxygen from the air and hydrogen from water. But everything else, this whole menu of essential minerals, has to come from the soil. And if just one of those is missing, the plant's growth can be seriously stunted. So, how do farmers get those nutrients back into the soil? Well, there are 2 main approaches. You've got manure, which is the organic option. It's fantastic for the long-term health of the soil, and it recycles farm waste. On the other hand, you have commercial fertilizers, which deliver very specific nutrients, like nitrogen and phosphorus. They can lead to huge yields, but if you overuse them, you risk polluting water and actually damaging the soil for the future. It's a classic trade-off between short-term gain and long-term health. Beyond just feeding the soil, farmers can get really clever with their planting patterns. One of the most elegant techniques is called intercropping. Instead of a huge field of just one thing, what's called a monoculture, you plant 2 or more different crops together in a really specific pattern.
Now, this is where it gets really smart. For example, you might plant a few rows of soybeans right next to a few rows of maize. Since they have different nutrient needs, they aren't fighting for the exact same resources in the soil. And this diversity also helps confuse pests and makes it way harder for a single disease to just sweep through and wipe out the entire field. It's a simple idea, but it has some really powerful results.
All right, we've designed the perfect seed, we've nurtured it as it grows, but the job isn't done, not even close. Now we get to the final and maybe the most stressful stage, protecting that crop from all kinds of threats until it can be harvested safely.
Out in the field, it's basically a war zone. The crops are in a constant battle against 3 main enemies. First, you've got weeds, which are just there to steal food, water, and sunlight. Then you have insect pests, which attack the plant in every way you can imagine, cutting roots, sucking out its lifeblood, boring into the stems. And finally, you've got diseases caused by tiny bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Any one of these can absolutely wreck an entire harvest.
For decades, the main weapon in this fight has been chemical pesticides. And yeah, they're effective, but we've learned that they are a serious double-edged sword. As the source material points out, if you overuse them, they can poison other plants and animals and cause all sorts of environmental pollution.
So the focus now is shifting to smarter, more integrated protection. This means using those disease-resistant varieties we designed earlier. It means using clever techniques like intercropping and crop rotation to naturally break the cycles of pests. It's about building a healthier, more resilient farm that doesn't just have to rely on a chemical spray to survive.
So, as we've seen, there's no single magic bullet here. The real secret to feeding the planet is putting all 3 parts of this blueprint together. You need that well-designed seed, it needs to be grown with sustainable methods, and it has to be defended with smart integrated protection. It's about the entire system working together in harmony.
You know, the first green revolution was a monumental achievement. It fed the world, but it focused almost entirely on yield, sometimes at a great cost to the environment. So as we look to the future, the big question we have to ask ourselves is this: what does the next agricultural revolution need to look like? How do we create a system that not only produces enough food for everyone, but does it in a way that actually sustains our planet for all the generations to come?